What does innovation look like? I'd like to share a story with you about a recent USC graduate. And he's going through some tough times. It's a few months after he's graduated, and he still has no job, college debt, and he's living at home with mom and dad. The chaos of being 22 years old. So he asked himself a question. What happens to textiles or clothing at the end of their life cycle? And I'm asking you guys and gals the same question. What happens to textiles or clothing at the end of their life cycle? Well, one, they become rags around our homes, or two, we donate them, at which point they get resold or shipped off to third world countries. Anything that isn't resold or shipped off because it's either out of fashion, like those bell-bottom pants that we have in our closets, or the garments are too damaged, they get put into landfills, at which point they're sent to landfills. And that's where our student starts to connect the dots. And he says, can I grab these garments before they hit the landfills and repurpose them into new materials? And he finds out that he can. So he creates a business model that in the first year generated approximately $750,000 in revenue. This is also the main concept for a circular economy. Today we're sitting on a sustainability time bomb. Humanity is using resources 50% faster than they can be replenished. And here in the United States, that percentage goes up to 600% faster than they can be replenished. If we continue on the current trend, in a few years, we're going to start to create irreversible damage to our ecosystem. And in a few decades, that damage will start to skyrocket. The current take, make, and dispose economy that we have has led to a lot of success for us. But it's not sustainable in the long run. And so we need to look at how to build a circular economy within our organizations. We have $1 trillion opportunity that we're sitting on that we're not capitalizing on yet. Tomorrow, you're expected to go back to your organizations and start looking at how to implement a circular economy. We're going to look at one process or one item and redesign it. Not only become leaders in this movement, but at the same time, partner up and collaborate with other leaders in the industry. And last but not least, become informed and involved by creating a position within your organizations that directly works with organizing a social responsibility as we talk about sustainability. We're going to talk about the sustainability time bomb a little bit more. We're going to go into the 4 principles of a circular economy, and we're going to go over recommendations in today's presentation. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce Team 360. I'm Gus Garcia with Smart and Final. This is Leah Hill with Coca-Cola, Julia Buchanan with Niagara Bottling, Marco Arzola with Norgate Gonzalez Markets, and John Shipp with Food for Less.
In 2025, world population is expected to grow another 1.5 billion people. While the US will see some population growth, most of this population growth is going to come from Asia and other developing countries. In addition, in 2025, there will be another 1.8 billion additional middle-class customers in the market. And like the population growth, these customers will come from Asia and mostly developing countries, not the US. Now, their lifestyles will be very different than they are today. Today, they're mostly agricultural, they buy in bulk, and they have very little waste. As they move into a middle-class customer, they become consumers. They demand more packaging, they demand more product, and in turn, they have greater waste in the economy. So what do these numbers look like? Well, when you look at food consumption up 24% and food spending up 57%, those are good numbers, right? What business wouldn't want numbers like that or increases like that? The problem comes with the consumption and the packaging. There's additional packaging of 47%, and there's also additional end-of-life materials of 47% into the economy. The challenge is when we look at the commodity growth in the US. Over the last 100 years, science, technology, and innovation have allowed commodities to decrease in price. Flour, wheat, and corn, through science, have become developed more growth, and they've yielded more product. But the problem is science has its limits. Most of these commodities have reached their yielding limits, and they can no longer yield anymore. In the last 15 years, because of this, and because of the world population growth, we've seen 100 years worth of commodity savings, be reduced, and in 15 years, we've seen commodity prices jump past those 100 years of savings. Now I'm going to turn it over to Marco, and Marco is going to talk about the take and make and dispose model of today.
The take, make, and dispose economy of today is reaching its limits, and it's just no longer sustainable. Currently, we take our natural resources and we process them. In this process, materials and energy are wasted. Manufacturers then take these resources and make products. Waste is also generated in this phase. Finally, the products reach the consumer. Once the consumer is done with these products, some get recycled, but the vast majority end up in landfills. The CPG and the retail industry have done a good job reducing waste. However, much still needs to be done. 80% of post-consumer materials are lost to landfills. What if we could do something different? Well, I'm here to tell you there is something different, and it's a circular economy. Now I'll have Julia walk you through a circular economy.
The circular economic model is a $1 trillion opportunity. This model is developed to eradicate waste throughout the entire product life cycle. It really starts with design, designing products right the first time. It's a lot more than recycling. It's about the reuse and remanufacture of these valuable materials. We believe that this is an answer to several complex issues businesses are facing today and will face in the future as resources become more scarce. The circular economy is good for our people, our planet, and our profit. It's good business, and it's the right thing to do to reduce our carbon footprint. Our future customer, Gen Y and Gen Z, they care immensely about environmental stewardship and align themselves with companies that are focused on environmentally sustainable initiatives. By incorporating the elements of a circular economy, we will avoid regulation, fines, litigation, and bad PR. Fundamentally, if we do not self-regulate as industry leaders, then we will face costly government regulation in the future. Where are the profits? It's estimated in the core consumer packaged goods sectors that over $700 billion worth of profit can be extracted from these valuable materials through the recycling, remanufacture, and reuse. In packaged food alone, it's $270 billion worth of value. We'd like to introduce to you the 4 principles of a circular economy in hopes that you will take some of these ideas back to your companies. The first is looking at our business model. How do we set our business model up so that we can extract that value? The second is design. Designing those products right the first time and designing them with multiple useful lives in mind. The third is logistics, looking at reverse logistics opportunities and finding efficiencies within our supply chain. And fourth, most important, collaboration. Collaboration with partners across our value chain, across industry verticals, and with global partners that are spearheading work in this area. I'd now like to turn it over to Leah, who will explain these principles a bit further.
So the first principle of a circular economy is a business model. So how do we, as industry leaders, take our waste, turn it into wealth? Well, the first thing you have to do is take a look at your business model. So who's doing that? Procter & Gamble. They have been able to create $1 billion in value of waste with the products that they have. So how have they done it? Well, in their Charmin plant in Mexico, they are able to take the waste from the production of that product and actually sell it to local communities for roofing. Another way that they've done it is in their Pampers facilities. So the products and waste from making diapers and wipes are actually used and sold for upholstery filling. And for Procter & Gamble, this has led them to have zero waste at 25% of their plants. The next principle of a circular economy is design. So like we said, design it right the first time. So what would you guys think if I said that your next bottle of wine was going to be shipped to you in a mushroom? Kind of crazy, right? Well, there's a company out here called Ecovative who's doing it. Let's take a look at what they're doing.
At Ecovative, we're producing home compostable materials to replace plastic foams and other harmful synthetics. In a world that produces more and more waste by the day, there is an environmental and economic need for a realistic solution. By using a system that is based on nature, Ecovative's mushroom materials can compete on cost with petroleum-based products. We do this while achieving unique and competitive performance characteristics. And unlike the materials we're replacing, mushroom materials are bio-based and totally home compostable. Ecovative's process starts with agricultural byproducts like corn stalks and the root structure of mushrooms, called mycelium. The mycelium branches out to form a matrix around the agricultural waste, resulting in a solid, strong mass. Ecovative's unique factories are a mix of advanced automation and specialized indoor farming techniques. We were able to grow this material into a variety of different shapes. Depending on the plant material and type of mycelium used, our lab team fine-tunes and customizes performance properties to compete with many conventional materials.
Pretty cool, right? So like we said, if you design it right from the first time, we can reuse it and it's better for the environment. The next principle of the circular economy is logistics. So what we have to do is take a look at how our product gets to and from our facilities. So reverse logistics. So in reverse logistics, a good example of that we have locally here is Ralph's and Food for Less with their anaerobic digester. So what that is they take all of their food waste and they bring it back and they put it into an anaerobic digester, which turns into clean energy and fertilizer for other food products. So in our research, it's estimated that $170 per ton is generated from that. There's an 18% ROI and 20% is used to power their warehouses and their creameries. So they are definitely finding a way to use the waste back into a profit pool. And they're actually partnering with a company named Feed. The fourth and final piece of a circular economy, Gus is gonna walk us through.
So the final principle of a circular economy is collaboration. And collaboration is one of those words that's thrown around a lot in our industry. It's really hard to execute, and very rarely is it ever seen done within an industry or across industries. And that's why this next example is really neat. This next example is a project called Project Mainstream. Project Mainstream is a project that's brought 11 companies together and their CEOs to really look at the value chains and opportunities within all these organizations to cut the waste out of it or repurpose the waste that's being created from it. Right now they have 3 flagship projects. The first project the first project that they're looking at is Plastic Packaged Roadmap, which basically has 2 end goals in sight. The first end goal is to make sure that they have a go-to guide on how to mass produce packaging. And the second one is how to recollect that from once it gets in the consumer's hands. And then that's the biggest part here is how do we collect this stuff before it gets to the landfills. The second deliverable that they're working on is looking at the ink that goes into print ads. Right now there's a lot of chemicals that go into that ink, and when the paper goes to the recycling centers, it's really hard to break that down. So can they put more natural resources into that ink and have the same quality, so that way the recycling process is a lot quicker and the turnover of materials back into the consumer's hands is a lot quicker. And the last deliverable that they're looking at is actually changing the way organizations look at assets. Right now we look at direct materials, and once it gets into the consumer's hands, that's it. We don't really look at them anymore. And they're trying to make sure that we look at assets throughout the whole value chain, even once they end up in the consumer's hands, and finding ways to bring that back into our organizations to create value, and not only create value, but also keep commodity prices down. They have a goal of saving businesses and cities $500 million within the next couple of years, at the same time being able to reduce the waste that goes to landfills by 100 million tons. They spurred this other platform for circular economies that's called the Circular Economy 100 or the CE 100. And this is a really open platform for organizations to come and not only discuss how to get this implemented within their businesses, but at the same time share success stories and challenges that they've come across. It's a really good place for smaller individual organizations to go and learn, how do I get this implemented in my organization today? The big key takeaway from this slide is circular economy is already here, and it's already in other industries. So how do we bring this into our industry as company leaders? The Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the bottom picture down here, is the leading group in this movement. And these are some of the partners that we've talked about today. The McKinsey Company and Ellen MacArthur Foundation are really educating not only businesses, but CEOs and organizations on the movement that's going on and how to really bring that into our homes. So why should we care? Well, as John and I spoke about earlier, resources are being used up faster than ever before, and commodity prices are going up. As retailers, we have a responsibility. One, it's to put a quality product out on the shelf, but also to put it at a very competitive price. And if we can't control our resources, it's going to be very difficult to have these products on our shelves at competitive prices. We're not just talking about new profit pools and recycling, we're talking about new profit pools throughout the value chain, whether it's in reusing, repurposing, or remanufacturing. It's a $1 trillion opportunity that hasn't been capitalized yet in this industry. And last but not least, it's the right thing to do for our business and our organization. As a shopper, I want to shop where people care about what's going on globally. And our shoppers in the future will also care about this. We want to move from the sustainability time bomb to a circular economy. We've walked you guys through the circular economy model and principles. We want you guys to go back, and gals, to go back to your organizations and find one product or one process that you can redesign. Become leaders, but also collaborate with other organizations in your industry or across industries to set up the right models for success. And last and not least, make sure that you're being informed, are involved, and create a position within your company that sets everybody up for success. I thank you guys for coming out today, and I'd like to open the floor for questions at this time.
Yeah.
The waste that you were discussing there, did you separate package waste from food waste for the retail industry, or is that the combined waste number when you look at it?
The $270 billion number, that was combined.
So that does include food waste. And do you see a different methodology for the circular economy for food waste relative to package waste?
We do. In fact, there's several different business models that can be implemented depending on whether or not you're at the consumer packaged good level, which is more focused on the material, as opposed to the retailer level, which we do think food waste there is a huge opportunity, and the anaerobic digester is a great opportunity. We look at partnership with a lot of smaller organizations and potentially a collaborator like Unified Grocers, bringing those smaller players together in order to implement a labor and a capital-intensive project such as that.
Do you see the use of RPC containers at the warehouse level as a useful tool to help reduce some of these costs?
Yes. So in a reverse logistics model or principle, these stores would deliver, or there'd be bins where stores could put this product in or waste product. They get delivered back to the DCs, at which point you would use those containers to take them either to an anaerobic digester or a composting center.
Good job, you guys. Thank you, Team 360.